Okay, we're going to call this special workshop to order. And do we have any oral communications?
No, sir.
Nothing at this time, so we'll go to item number one of items one.
Okay, I'm gonna have, this is sort of the,
Dennis? you
yeah,
wanna
this
take it
is,
away?
I'll turn this over to James. Just a very brief background, he'll go into a lot more of the history. As you're aware, the district's going through a master plan update. Part of that update, which will be included, will be an IRP or integrated resource plan, looking at any and all options. The board gave us some direction to move forward if certain things happened. Those things have happened, and I'll now turn it over to James.
Good afternoon, members of the board. Really quick, let me introduce you the project team. James Gumpo, district engineer. I got Robert Scholl, our senior engineer in charge of development. He's also the project manager for the district in charge of the master plan. And our consultants, James Strayer and Scott Lynch, they're from Black and Beach Consultants. And they were the successful consultants when we went out with an RFP for the master plan. And they're also doing our, basically our water resource portion of the master plan themselves. So with that, we start the presentation. So, water resource workshop number one, that's today. Right now, today, we're gonna basically go over an overview of what we're gonna talk about. We're gonna go over a little bit of background, and then the current strategies and policies that the district currently holds. The evaluation process of how we're going to move forward with the workshops and with the water resource, how we analyze the next steps that we're gonna take. And then I'm going to hand it over to Black and Beach to do the hard work here. And they're going to go over the work to date, options to consider, and of course, they're going to go over how we're going to get through to the next steps until a final decision. So with that, a quick overview. Our main objective today is to identify and assess options and what options are out there. And just to be clear on this, the staff has not even met with Black and Beach to talk about the options that staff wants. We want this to be an open process, so this will be the first discussion that our consultant has about the options that are available and the options that the board wants to see as far as water resources. Yes, sir?
Will the staff then have their input, or are they going to input now?
It's going to be an interactive process. There'll be inputs from the board and possibly staff.
He'll actually walk you through the selection process and how the board's gonna see the options, how the board will select the top three, and then how the board will tell us what they want us to pursue.
But I think I heard James say that staff has got some options as well that they would like to see. Are they going to come to now or some other time? When's that going to happen?
Well, most of the options I think are pretty well known, so we're thinking that most of the options from the board will be the staff options also. But however, if there isn't, then we'll have additional discussions.
Okay.
So at the end goal, basically, we want to determine the top three options and identify a preferred option if there is any, and evaluate and move forward with it within our planning documents. The process we're going to go through is really to identify the options in the board workshops, with the first one being today. Evaluate these options, and that's something that our consultant will do, and they'll go over that process a little bit more detail with you later. And review the results, and that'll be a secondary board workshop for reviewing the results. Then obviously identifying the top results, and if there is a preferred option, moving forward with that. And then, of course, finalizing and drafting the reports at the board workshop, utilizing that in the master plan, and of course, our recycled water or water resources plans. So a little bit of background. So currently, as the board is aware, the district is 100% relied on imported water, and we use about 16,800 acre feet a year, average. We wholesale recycled water to Carlsbad and Livenheim Water District, and that's about 3,400 acre feet a year. And that's full allocation, basically. Everything we produce at Meadowlark is currently being utilized as a wholesale agency to Livenheim and Carlsbad, which retail it out. In progress right now is the desal plant, and that's going to be 3,500 acre feet a year. And the OMWD connection, which is a source from the OMWD reservoir up there. And basically, it's the same imported water, but now we have a raw water connection. And 2,750 acre feet a year is the minimum on that. So how this relates to our overall planning documentation, strategic plan, focus area 1, our infrastructure integrity. We have 3 areas which this plan, along with the master plan itself, hits. Obviously, the first one is the master plan. The water resources portion of it is going to be a large component of the master plan. And the work that we do here and the documentation and the report that's finalized from the results of the workshops will be used in part in the master plan for the water resources section and any recommendations within the master plan for future infrastructure. Which brings me to the next strat focus area, 1.4, which is fund, repair, replace, and future infrastructure. So obviously the future infrastructure fits right in, and also depending on which avenue the district pursues for its future, it may have some effects on what gets replaced, how it gets replaced. And 1.5, urban water management plan, that ties in with our conservation, where we get the water, what our water portfolio will look like in the future. Directly, obviously, focus area number 6 within the strat plan, resource exploration, alternative water resources, that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about different alternatives that are available to the district. Reclaim water directly, both as a wholesale and possible retail, and integrated water resources plan itself. So the integrated water resources plan, which we've done as a separate document in the past, is now going to be rolled into the master plan, and this is going to be a kind of a kickoff process on the water resources side of that. And this is how we're going to evaluate everything. So the first workshop is today, and we want to capture the board concepts. Again, just to kind of reiterate, staff has not talked to Black and Veatch about what concepts to consider at this point. So we want to have a discussion here with the board and get the ideas from the board and have interaction. So we want this to be an interactive workshop with lots of participation. Review the proposed criteria. Step 2 will be Black and Veatch actually doing an evaluation of that and coming back for the next step, which is board workshop number 2, timeframes in January sometime. And at that point, the top 3 will be ranked and identifying an action plan for how to pursue those top 3. Step 4 is a final board workshop scheduled for around May, and that will be review of the report and then finalizing the report and submitting it to the state for our recycled water business plan. Of course, using all the information towards our master plan too. That will happen parallel with this effort. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Black and Veatch to start the real work.
So first thing we want to cover is just get a little background, make sure we're all remembering, and I know for James and I, we're just trying to catch up to speed on what everything the district has studied and done. So we've kind of reviewed these previous documents and decisions that the district has made. The first major one was the 2007 Integrated Resources Plan. It looked at several different options, both raw or potable water supplies, as well as recycled water opportunities. So that included the Levenhain water treatment upgrade in connection to that system. It included looking at the transfer of the Escondido Vista Irrigation District's water into Vallecitos' service area. It looked at the option of expanding the Oceanside's wastewater treatment plant and serving that into the district. It looked at building a new recycled water plant in the Twin Oaks area. It looked at the incorporation of the seawater desalination plant at Carlsbad, tying into the district's potable water system. And it looked at some regional groundwater banking as an opportunity. Not regional meaning not necessarily in this area, but further outside the watershed where you would bank the water and then bring it in at a later date as needed. So some of the conclusions from that study was, one is to move ahead with the water treatment plant connection and the desalination projects, which the district is doing right now, working on those. It also recommended additional investigations looking at Escondido VID, Oceanside, and groundwater banking options. It also recommended to defer on the recycled water project just because the cost was a lot higher. I don't know offhand, James or Rob, if you know, but I know it was 2, maybe 3 times higher than typical potable water costs, so there was a recommendation to defer on that. Then as part of the 2008 water, wastewater, and recycled water master plans, there were several options considered. And the difference between the integrated and the master plan, for those who know, integrated tends to look at things at a bigger picture level, whereas master plan looks at things at a very specific facility level. Like, okay, if we had oceans water desal, how does that, where do we tie that into our system? What does that mean? Does it cause us to need more or less storage, pumping? So those, the kind of things that we looked at, that were looked at by the district, included the incorporation of seawater desal into the system. It looked at a very specific area in the southeast part of the district, looked at purchasing recycled water from Escondido and using it into a small neighborhood area there, expanding the Vallecitos 2 connection with the water authority. It looked at treated water purchases, again, from Escondido's, Vista's water treatment plant, Haines water treatment plant, and the Oceanside plant. The results, similar to the IRP, were again to proceed with the seawater desal, proceed with the Haines water treatment plant connection, again, defer on the recycled water purchase costs. In this case, it was really just looking at that specific Escondido opportunity was, again, extremely high compared to potable water costs, and then investigate further treated water purchases options. So any questions on that?
And the reason I had him go through some of this is the board, I think, Jim, you were the only one, you weren't even, I think,
On an 8.
you came in an 8, so a lot of the planning documents that have gone through all these iterations were done really before anybody on the board sat on the board. So that's why I asked him to go back, go through some of the history, is we have gone through a lot of these conversations in the last 2 cycles. And you've heard Scott mention the, and James as well, the Urban Water Management Plan, the IR, and the Master Plan. And the reason there was a 2007 IRP was we never had one. It was just kind of stuff that was in the Master Plan. So we did it separate from the Master Plan because we needed to move forward. We have to do the Urban Water Management Plan on a 5-year cycle on 15, do it 2015. So what we did was we've now gotten all 3 of the documents on track to be included as one cycle. So the IRP is now in the master plan, and the master plan now matches the 5-year cycle, which matches the urban water management plan, which tracks the water authorities, urban water management plan. So it's taken us a few cycles to get here. The documents have all been done in the past, but now they're all coming in one time, so they'll be done on a 5-year cycle. So that's why there's a little more background here than you're probably used to.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue, Dave. So one of the things that I noticed too, and as part of the scope of what we're doing, is one, there's two aspects of this. There's the potable or raw water supplies, and then there's the recycle. And the potable water, decisions have already been made to connect to the seawater desal and the Haines. Those are obviously set decisions and moving forward. So there's not as many need or desire on the opportunity side necessarily for the potable water. We're still going to look at these other treated water purchases as part of our master plan, but because the decisions have kind of been made as to which one's the preferred options, you have better diversification in your supplies, better, more diversification in the sense of where these supplies come into your system. So if there's problems within the system, emergencies, you're not relying on as many connection points. So the one difference in both the integrated resources plan and the master plan was they tend to target very specific recycled water opportunities. And I think I didn't mention, we didn't have it in here, but most of you are aware Vallecitos is a partner in the North County San Diego Recycled Water Study, which is looking at a lot more opportunities, particularly indirect potable reuse, direct potable reuse. So one of the things that this master plan is doing that's very different than previous studies is we want to look at all the recycled water opportunities, whether it's a small little neighborhood thing like Escondido, or it's something more profound and long-term like a direct potable reuse. So that's a little different than it's been done in the past, where you've kind of looked at little parts. We want to bring all those parts, all the things you've have done and are doing, and look at it, let's say, comprehensively. It's not a detailed look per se, it's more of a general overview. We've procured money from the state Water Resources Board. They do recycled water grants. They've allocated $75,000 for this, so that's helping to get a little more detail than we normally would have been able to do, and so that's going to help a lot. And so what we want to do now is really just kind of go through those different options. Again, just to talk about the water supply, in case there's any questions, you have connections through Vallecitos, 7, 8, 9, 10 connections with the Water Authority. We've also got water supply options that the districts has looked at from the Escondido Vista water treatment plant flumes, and then we have the new OMWD supply that's in place, as well as the planned desal. So that's kind of a picture on the water supply choices. So what we want to really focus now are what are the options on the recycled water side? Yeah.
would you mind going back to this slide?
Yeah.
And going through each one of these, just, we get a supply of water, Val 7, what does that actually mean?
That's the water authority designates their, if you see the blue lines coming down here, that's the
Yeah.
water authority's aqueducts. Every time they have a connection to one of their member agencies, that gives it a name. In this
So-
case, Val 7 stands for Vallecitos 7.
We're taking water off of their main line at that Val
That's
7.
right, that's where your system
And the
gets fed
same
water.
with 9, 10,
All
the
four.
large blue line is San Diego Water
Right.
Authority.
So they'll have Oceanside will have a connection to it, and I don't know for sure, but my guess is it's gonna be O dash something.
Okay, and then 12, is that also a San Diego County Water Authority line? Or V12?
Yes. I mean, Val 2 over here on the.
It's Val 2,
Yeah,
not Val
That's
12.
yours too, yeah. So I didn't even, yeah. Val
It
2
is-
is also Vallecitos.
Is
right?
also,
Yeah. Different line, they have
yeah.
like 2 lines coming down.
mhm. And the line from Val 2 to Val 10, is that San Diego County Water Authority as well?
I think so, right? Is it the crossover? Yeah.
And
And
then
that,
the full-
I think that's part of it's faded in here, it's Twin Oaks Valley Water Treatment Plant, that's right next to the Val 10 connection.
Okay,
So some of your water, it comes from Val 10, but a lot of it's actually coming right out of the water treatment plant.
and then the line from Val 9 to the west, I guess?
That's actually the desal pipe.
Ah.
It ties in
Uh-huh.
right at Val 9 and right.
Okay.
Okay.
That's water authority, that blue line is, that's the water.
Oh, that's water. Oh, the
That's,
green, I'm sorry, the green line is that's the green line.
the green line is the
You're right, yeah.
desal.
There we go.
Okay, all right. Well, now, I have a much better idea what.
Yeah, we've actually got the 4 connections. We got one in the far north, far south, far east, and far west.
You
Plus
guys
one
have more
right in the
water
middle.
supply running through your
Yeah.
neighborhood than most agencies. I
Yeah,
guess.
we've got a connection to each aqueduct, so that's why we have such great flexibility when there's a shutdown.
Yeah.
Unless there's a complete shutdown of every aqueduct, we always have a connection live to one of the aqueducts.
Okay, okay.
Most agencies don't have that many connections, especially at this size, so.
I thought desal was coming up more towards the Twin Oaks where the water storage tanks are. Aren't they building
It
that?
actually goes there.
It can go up,
It
Go
goes,
up there and go up there.
it does go up,
it can be pushed up.
it can be pushed up. The connection does come in where you're talking about, so that connection is a little,
So it's actually coming down here, the southern part of the city, over by, I'm trying to get a frame of reference.
No,
here.
Rob's gonna point
Like
out.
Kentucky Fried Chicken.
So basically, it'll come up, one of the pipelines will, this will.
But where's the actual connection at? It's showing it right at Rancho Santa Fe. It's actually to the north, right there.
Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Cherokee.
Kentucky Fried
Oh,
Chicken.
over there by Trek Bicycles?
In that big empty field out there, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
in the graphic film.
Okay.
And so you say it can go up to the Twin Oaks area, is that in the plan?
Yeah, the way the desal pipeline, we haven't had that presentation for a while, but the way the pipe is leaving, there's a pump station at the desal plant in Carlsbad. They built a new 54 that came all the way in, tied into the middle of town right there, tied into the aqueduct. What they're gonna do is they're gonna pump, it's gonna continue pumping north up that blue line, all the way up to where it says to the Twin Oaks Valley Treatment Plant. There's a new pipe there that went into the treatment plant. They're not gonna retreat it, they're just gonna blend it with the water coming out of the treatment plant, out of the Twin Oaks plant. And then it goes back into the 108-inch pipe and just comes right back down. So the only reason we get it directly is where it ties into the aqueduct, is where we tie into the aqueduct at the exact same spot.
Okay, and so, and not to get too far off the topic here, but last night, I think it was mentioned with our meeting with the city council that the water may taste different. We're gonna have a blended water, so the water may taste different, but we're not gonna have 2 different types of tasting water. This is gonna be, 100% of it be blended, right?
No,
Okay, so.
The water that everybody else in the county gets is gonna get a blend of it. The water that we're taking is going to be predominantly in the downtown area, which will be all desal water.
Okay, so they're not gonna get a blended, the downtown folks?
No.
Will it blended other than,
The rest of the district will be blended.
Okay, interesting. Thanks.
that was our option that we had, was to say, no, we don't wanna actually buy directly, we'll just buy and pay the melded rate. But then what that said was, okay, then we're no different than anybody else, and we wouldn't have the direct access as an owner of that water, to where if something happens,
we would get the same proportionate reduction as everybody else. So the decision the board made was, no, we want to buy directly, so we know we always have that amount of water plus a proportionate share.
Quick question, maybe sometime, Dennis, you can show us what the water district considers as downtown area, because.
We're working on those
We don't have downtown.
Yeah, we're working on those studies right now. We'll bring them back and show them to you.
So now what we want to get into the kind of the fun part of the meeting, and that's really to talk about the options and you know, our chance to listen to you, say, you know, what are your ideas, what are the things you want to make sure we cover. I'll start off just kind of in general. There's really 4 types of recycled water that Vallecitos is looking at. One is the current system, which is to treat it and wholesale it to other member agencies, which is what you're doing right now. There's non-potable reuse, which is your, you know, what you normally see, kind of purple pipe systems, landscaping, soccer fields, schools, that kind of stuff. Sometimes industrial, commercial type uses. Those are typically non-RO treatment systems, which is what you're doing right now at the Metal Arc plant, basically produces non-potable reuse water. Then there's indirect potable reuse, which is typically blended with groundwater and or surface water supplies, although I don't believe anybody's doing surface water yet in the state, although a couple guys are working on it. And then lastly would be direct potable reuse, which is something that the state is working on eventually to build the guidelines or the regulations to do direct potable reuse, which would be more what we call pipe to pipe, which would be basically taking out the groundwater, surface water, blending and being either direct from pipe to pipe or typically maybe from wastewater treatment plant pipe to the front of the water treatment plant where it would get blended and treated again. So different concepts. You know, I won't get into iterations, but IPR and DPR tends to, at some point, there's a gray area between the two as to what you call it. And that's part of the regulations that don't exist yet that they're working, that, you know, are going to get worked on over the next several years. So with that, we'll open up and, you know, basically what we do is we kind of printed out an overall schematic of your system. The green shows the major trunk lines of the wastewater system, going down to Metal Arc and then off the page to the Encina plant. We've got the Water Authority aqueduct system in here and your connections. We show the desal water system coming in. We have the Liebenhain connection that's in progress. And there's the neighboring agencies, wastewater plants, the Hale plant at Escondido and Harmony Grove, which is a small water recycling plant that's under construction that the county is leading. And then there's the wastewater treatment plant option up here. And then there's surface water, groundwater. These are things that have been studied, I think, as part of the North San Diego County study. There's the San Marcos groundwater basin, which is kind of roughly in this area here. There's South Lake, and then there's Lake San Marcos, are the main kind of features that we can work with. Yes.
You brought up Hale, where does Hale's water go to?
James, you probably just better than me.
And could we flip back to the map? Personally, I'm having a hard time reading that. But the one that
Yeah,
you had
we can show both.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so Hale Avenue and Escondido's plant, the Hale Avenue Resource Recovery Facility is, I believe, over here. It's a little more clear on the map here. Goes into the Escondido land outfall that goes to the Encina Water Treatment Plant. I'm sorry, not Encina, the San Alejo Water Reclamation Facility, which is in Cardiff. There it's joined by the effluent of that plant, and they join together. So it goes down through the Rancho Santa Fe area. It kind of goes off the map here if we're looking at this map. So it goes down to the south. Right now, Escondido is going through a potable reuse program. They're going to serve agricultural uses first, and then they're going to do indirect potable reuse or direct potable reuse to Lake Dixon is their plan. That's what they presented to the board, and the board unanimously approved that plan. So they're shifting from a non-potable focused recycled water program to a agricultural, where they're actually going to demineralize some of the water to get the salt content down, to buy them some time because they have an outfall constraint, and then they're going to go indirect or direct potable reuse. So that's their plan right now. Yes.
Their plant that comes from Harf, that goes to San Alejo, where does it go from San Alejo?
right at the San Elijo plant. It joins with the San Elijo outfall. Together, they go into the ocean outfall, and it goes into the ocean.
They have an outfall as well.
They have an outfall as well, that's
Mhm.
correct, yeah.
And do you know how many gallons they ship out?
Escondido, their total projection is about 16 to 17 of wastewater right now. It combines, yeah, 1 million gallons a day. Combines with San Alejo's, the total stays on the order of 25. We have that number, we can get you that
Yeah.
number.
The capacity's.
Yeah, that's ultimate, Jim, that's not now.
Yeah.
Oh, that's all.
That's ultimate, that's not now. Escondido probably generates about 10 to 11 right now.
And going out to the outfall at San Elijo?
They sell quite a bit, I don't know what it is, but the balance just gets dumped in the ocean.
Yeah, but it's 10, 12, something like that?
No, it's probably 6 or 7 million that gets dumped per day.
Oh,
Quick question, the San Elijo, is it on that map anywhere?
No, they're way over here.
It's it's in Cardiff.
Cardiff, San Elijo.
San Elijo's a big
So
area.
here's Hill Avenue, the watershed goes like this, it comes down and around through Rancho Santa Fe, and then out through, down into San Elijo.
Mhm.
So the outfall go into the ocean,
Yeah.
with the
Basically, the
lagoon?
two plants kind of merge, and then there's an ocean outfall that goes out to the.
How far out is it?
I don't know.
It's a few miles, yeah, we can get you a graphic, we have a graphic that shows both of them, the size, where they come together, and it was in the master plan most recently.
And the effluent that they're pumping out, is that the same quality or unquality that we'd be pumping out from Encina?
Yeah,
Mhm.
sure,
Oh, yeah.
it's secondary
Yeah,
treated
same-
water.
same
Yeah,
standards.
Yeah, it's secondary treated water. They do get Escondido done with a little bit of water from San Diego, but it's secondary treated water, the same as what's going into, so what is it? The same as what's going to Encina, what Encina produces. It's identical, by the time Encina's done with it, it's identical what Harp is doing to it and what San Alejo is doing to it. They're all producing secondary effluent going into an ocean outfall.
Thank you.
So, Dennis and Jim, I had to leave the Encina workshop early. Was there a general direction as to what to look at, or is that, they're still thinking about that?
Well, you really, with everything we've talked about, groundwater and whether or not it's a potable well or the size of the basin, and again, just some history here is, there didn't used to be a defined basin in San Marcos.
Right.
The San Marcos Basin was never defined, I want to say until 2006 or 2008, the water bulletin came out, the federal water bulletin, which identifies a groundwater basin. That's the first time it was ever formally acknowledged to exist. So to your question is, when you look at those 4 items right there in a groundwater basin, they all kind of tie together. There's no magic here, really, in the options that we have available. What Encina came up with, the direction on a long-term, which was included in the master plan that the board just accepted, is on a long-term basis, look at water the same as the solids pellets that we're generating. Encina is core function is a wastewater treatment plant. Okay. The solids produced as a byproduct of that wastewater treatment. Great, if we can make a couple $100,000 a year on it, that's great. But let's quit putting so much work and effort into trying to market something which is not what they do. Do a private-public partnership, bring somebody in, give them the pellets, let them go market it. We can't compete with Milorganite? I can never say that right. Milorganite? Milorganite. We can't compete. They'll make in Encina in a year what Milorganite will process in a day. You can't crack that market. We can't crack the market to get into Home Depot, any of that stuff. We just can't do it. So the concept was there, keep doing it, get the story out, but let somebody else take it over and run it. The same with the water. They started talking about, okay, should it be the Encina Water Alliance? Should they be looking at it as water? Absolutely. Same as we do Title 22, same as we may do DPR, IPR. But with Encina, they're a wastewater agency. So what they need to do is look at that water, 20 million gallons a day, whatever we decide can happen over there, whatever the board elects to do. If they build an advanced wastewater treatment plant next door, as Scott was saying, that becomes your intermediate step, which would be the groundwater or the surface water. And guess what? We have a really nice desal plant right up the street. Pump it up to the desal plant, look at re-rating the desal plant. put it through the desal plant, ship it right back up that nice orange pipe, and we'll buy it right back.
Right.
So what the consensus of the board was, the direction to look forward in the strategic plan in Encina, was it's a resource. We're not a water district. Produce it, call the water authority and say, we got a deal for you. Sell it to the water authority, they'll run it through the desal plant, and we'll ship it back.
Well, the reason I ask that is now help me connect that future potential with our San Diego reclaimed water potential that we have all the little dots on our localized map.
I think these guys have that part in their concept of what to talk about.
Yeah, we talked a little bit
Yeah.
about that.
And that's part of what this whole thing is, Jim.
Right.
Is we've got all that, and today, what we want to do is exactly, to think, I mean, Mike and I last night, we agreed, we're gonna call the governor, and we're gonna build a pipe from, Columbia Gorge down.
Oh, good.
Spend the $7 billion on
We're
that
going to
instead,
Alaska.
from
Yeah.
Alaska. We're gonna import some ice cubes, icebergs.
Yeah.
Whatever the case may be, of what's the extent of what we can look at from a district as a water resource? That's the bottom line. And you look at those rules right there, it's gotta be a combination of everything, imported water, IPR, DPR, reclamation. There is no silver bullet to any of them, it's a water resource. The trick that, what these guys will do, and they can, I'm probably stealing some of their thunder as far as the different things, but like direct potable reuse. Well, we don't have any reclaimed water right now. It's gone for another 15 or 20 years. I don't know how long the contract is. But by the time direct potable reuse rules come into effect, which is probably 10 years, we'll be getting to the tail end of that contract. Now we've got 5, 6, 7, 8 million gallons, whatever these guys tell us we'll have then, that can become your supply for direct potable reuse. This is not gonna happen in a decade. It's just not gonna happen. And then how it ties in the interim with all the other stuff, I think that was part of their scope in the master plan, is how do we take the North County's reclamation project and incorporate it into our master plan so that we can make sure we're taking advantage of the pieces. That's part of what they will do in this selection process. Saying, okay, here's the opportunities, here's the basic risk. When they talked about from step 1 to step 2, we're gonna put them in a matrix, and we're gonna say, here's the risk, pros and cons of all of these options. Here's how they shake out. We're gonna come back to you guys. You're gonna say, okay, these 3 make sense. Evaluate those now to a cost, legality, regulatory standpoint. Tell us which is cost effective, and then tell us what to do. Looks like you got somebody back there.
Within this master.
Within the master plan. Because you gotta remember, we can't do anything from a standpoint of developing a water supply or anything until we go through a master plan and an EIR. We don't have any authority to just go do something. It's gotta be documented in the EIR.
So our focus today is to try and develop that, to deliver it to the master plan?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, today, anything you want to talk about. If you want us to look at developing the groundwater basin as conjunctive use with imported water, tell us, okay, we want you to think about, James, they're going to write these down, or Scott will deal with it. If the groundwater basin is big enough that we could clean it up, put raw water in it. Probably not going to be cost effective, because the second it hits the ground, we now have to build a treatment plant to pull it back out and use it. So if we want to do IPR or DPR, and you put IPR water into the groundwater basin, you still have to pull it back out, build a treatment plant to sell it. If you have a groundwater basin and you put the water into that groundwater basin, you've now got 200 wells, 100 wells, however many out there, doesn't really matter, that now they're not potable. I'll tell you that right now. The word potable keeps getting thrown around. There might be a well out there somewhere that they might want to drink in an emergency, but they would not be classified as potable water wells. I can guarantee you, we can't sink a well and use it. If you have all these other people that have groundwater wells right now and they're using them for whatever purpose, and now we start sinking and putting groundwater, reclaimed water into the ground, well, guess what? That water is now coming out of their wells. So we've now influenced their wells. We have to become the basin master. We have to take over the basin, get the good and the bad. Then you have to go through adjudication. Now you have to tell them what they can and can't do. It's a long, drawn-out process. But that's what these guys are going to do. They're going to look at groundwater through IPR, DPR, and say, here's the pros, here's the cons, here's the risk. What do you want to do, board? Which one do you want to go down that gives you the best flexibility? And keep in mind, when we're talking about this, look 10, 15, 20 years from now. Don't look next year. Don't even look in this master plan cycle, to be perfectly honest. Look at 2 or 3 master plans from now, because you've got to start setting the stage now for what you want us to do in 15 years. That's why we're doing it. So today is, like I said, Scott went over it, and James and Rob probably have a lot to talk about in detail, but it's really, what do you want us to look at? Do you want us to look at conjunctive use with reclaimed water? Do you want us to look at buying water directly from Escondido and just selling it to the southeast corner? Do you want us to, you name it. That's what today is. It's not to evaluate. Today is not to evaluate by any means. Today is purely, you guys, if it's come into your mind, say it. And we're gonna put it in the mix. That's what today is all about.
You know, when we were talking at Encina, I think what we were talking about is, what are we not doing now? And that's kind of the low-hanging fruit, you know, trying to see what is it that we consider to be a resource that we're not using? Because there's still quite a bit of water that we're not using that's being discharged into the ocean. And so that's kind of where that was going. So if it becomes that, and which I think is a pretty good use, and there were suggestions all over the board about that. You know, there's some people saying, hey, that's our water and we're going to use it. But I don't think they really understand the infrastructure and you don't want to become a water company. You know, San Diego County Water Authority is the mother of the water. So you do what you do best and keep it at that. So the idea at Encina was, what is it we're not doing now? We're doing a lot of things really well. And one of them was the pellets, and the pellets was just, that's a waste product. We can make a little bit of money. Let's not do what we don't do. Let's not go into marketing. Let's just sell that and get what we can. And we are saving quite a bit by trucking costs and things of that nature. The other thing was all the water that's being discharged to the ocean, and then what to do with that. And then what to do with our South 40 parcel, or South parcel. And so I think that's an interesting conversation, because that talks about, well, if we did go to the tertiary level, that next level of cleaning of the water, recycled water, where would we put it? And then how would we introduce that into the system? And whose system would it be? So that's why the discussion went to tie it into the desal plant. So you're selling, again, one of those things that is a resource that you're now just dumping into the ocean. You're going to kick that up a notch as far as cleaning it. You're going to sell it to San Diego County Water Authority because they own the desal plant. And once it gets into that pipeline, it's no longer yours. And well, what you have done is you've increased the water supply, in theory, to the North County.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't get any direct benefit other than kind of a global, you know, kind of a micro type of regional benefit. But that's all good, because from Encina's standpoint, you're making the most of all your waste products, and you become a resource remanufacturer or recycle, whatever you want to call it. And that's all good stuff. So what we have to think, one of the things we have to think about is, what is it that we're wasting, you know, and what is it that we're not taking advantage of? And if it's a lot of recycled water, or water that could be recycled, that just goes down to Encina, I don't think we should look at that as being recycled, being wasted, because I think that may be taking care of itself.
Right.
You know.
And I do understand, and I guess globally at that 32,000, 35,000 foot view, what I would like us to look at for the next 20 years is finding more resources other than San Diego County Water Authority, Metropolitan, and even if it ends up coming from Encina to the line. Are there other resources that we could find, use, or create?
When you say resources, you're talking potable or recycled water supplies?
All of the above.
All of the above, okay.
Capture stormwater, get buckets of rainwater, you know, all of it.
Well, quick question to staff, 10 or 15 years down the road, who has the ability to buy Poseidon? San Diego County Water Authority?
Yeah.
The contract, as I recall, and Betty she's probably heard more of this than I have, but I believe it was 2026. That's contingent upon delivery in January of 2016, kind of kickoff type date. I believe it's, lack of better terms, what do you call it in the real estate business, for first right of refusal issue. At 2026, the Water Authority had the right to step in and take over the pipe and the treatment plant, basically buy Poseidon out, which I'm assuming is some 20 years worth of profit-ish, and then refinance and rebuild, not rebuild, just refinance the plant and the pipe, and it would become their asset.
But if, and thinking far out, at 2030, let's try to suggest we're at 2030.
Mm-hmm.
Most of us aren't here. But it's 2030, we're clocking up. I mean, indirect potable and direct potable is the way of the world.
I would have to completely agree with you, Director Martin, and I think that was when we kind of kicked off on the master plan. It was when you back up and you do that long-term look. Because if you're looking at today, we generate 4.5-ish million gallons of reclaimed water, not quite what we can make because we're doing some upgrades, but it's committed. We don't own it. It's committed long-term. But when you look at DPR, and I think that's what Scott can explain here, is the interim. I hope we go from kind of talking about IPR straight to DPR personally, because I think the world's going to save a lot of money on that indirect middle step of environmental.
Right.
We have South Lake, but South Lake's not big enough. So if we put South Lake in there, you know, Jim and I've talked about this at length, you don't have a big enough body of water to get the contact. How long is it? 6 months?
6 months.
6 months?
What happens is that IPR has these tight regulations about blending and retention time.
Yeah.
When you can't meet those, the state will say, well, you can't do an IPR. The DPR regs may come into play, so there's that, like I said, there's that gray area.
Real fine.
Again,
You know,
2030.
we
But 2030,
2030, let's
we may
assume
have that
that
water,
DPR
we may have that water available now because that contract's now expired, and now we do have that resource.
So, but let's make that assumption that 2030 DPR, all of Encina's water is going back to San Diego County Water Authority, who then owns the now Poseidon, or the then Poseidon now, and it gets pumped back up. We can still only pump back up 7% of our needs, 10% of our needs. What's the number? 50 million gallons, isn't that
Well,
max?
50 million is the current rated capacity of the desal plant. So that's 7% of the county's needs right now.
Okay,
That's
7% of county's.
county's needs, yeah.
Okay, what percent of ours, 15?
When we take it directly 20.
20, right, 20%.
Okay.
20%.
So that's the max you're gonna get from that.
Unless
In-
if the plant expands.
Yeah, the
then you get more.
plant can theoretically look to consider going to 100 MGD.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then how much of that would be for us?
Well, I think that's where the whole issue is when we get this option, if we can get it in the contract to actually buy more when they do take over, we would like to double. The trick is gonna be is, let's say we are 20 years from now looking at these options. If all of this water comes from Encina, okay, so we as the member agencies are the ones taking that water, putting it in the plant, and bringing it right back. Who knows that we might be able to say at that point, well, no, we're just actually bringing our own water back and we pay the wheeling cost and the operating cost. And we actually bring 5 million gallons per day or 7 million gallons per day right back into our system. And it goes in a loop, round and around and around. That's a very viable option that could happen.
But what percentage of that is gonna be of our needs?
Oh, God,
At that point.
another 7 million,
6, 7 MGD, maybe.
probably 6 or 7 MGD, and I'm gonna guess that'd be another 30 or 40%.
So we get 50, we could potentially.
We
get
could
50%.
theoretically be getting 50%
So
of our
we
water.
still need 50% from Met.
Yep.
Or from San Diego County.
Well, from the water authority or
versus from
wherever,
Met.
yeah. And that's what this whole thing is, what is the resource we can go to find? Now, you remember, there's new water, and then there's just recycling, this good old thing. There's very little new water. The only new water is that ocean, period.
Is desal.
Yeah, desal is the only new water. The rest is, how can we recover and look to the future for how much? If there was some way that in 20 years, this board set policy that we were 50% local supply in San Diego County, that would be incredible. That would just be incredible.
Say that again, what's,
If 20 years from now, if we could have 50% local supply through desal, IPR, DPR, controlling our own destiny down here, that'd be incredible.
and you say we, San Diego County Water Authority and us.
We meaning Vallecitos.
Oh, Vallecitos, well, see, yeah, that, and that's where
Yeah.
I would like,
Yeah.
like to see us at least look to.
And that's, absolutely.
And so, if that were the goal, what pieces of that puzzle would we have to begin to think about to begin to put into place?
I think, Scott, I think that's kind of what the whole thing is here, that they'll be looking
I
at.
think
Oh, okay.
Yep.
you have, for your area, you obviously have a real lack of local rainfall supplies. So really the only two options, I think what you mentioned, Jim, was external sources, so somebody else's water that can be purchased or wheeled like a groundwater banking operation, or seawater desal, or your own recycled water. That's-
Well, and because I'm new and I don't know anything, I keep looking at when we do have a winter month, I see our stormwater going to the ocean. I don't know how much that is and if that just is so out of the realm of possibilities because it's dirty and you gotta clean it and the cost of all that. But,
Where do you put it? That's the big question.
Well, and on those two notes right there, that's something they'll look at. They'll add groundwater, surface water, they'll look at that too.
good.
And so what we look at, and this will give you a general idea of when we go through this evaluation is, let me take a treatment plant, a wastewater treatment plant as an example.
Yeah.
If we were to build a new wastewater treatment plant, right here in the parking lot.
Yeah.
Okay. You go by the current rules for an inland discharge. If it reaches a discharge to a live body of water, you go through the MPDS permit, which is National Pollution Discharge, same as Encina does, because it hits a live body of water. Metal Arc doesn't have that because we discharge through a pipe to Encina, so we have a different operating permit, a lot easier to comply with. But if we build a inland treatment plant, you either have to get rid of it in live stream, you have to have a way to get it to the ocean, or you have to have adequate storage. You have to have a minimum of 90 days of wet weather storage. 90 days minimum. Okay. So to go back in time when we built Metal Arc, we only operated at that 6.6 MGD, 600,000 gallons a day. Mar Reservoir is 54 million gallons. Easy math, 90 times 600,000. That's why Mar got built at 54 million gallons. There's your simple math. But let's pretend we're gonna build a 5 MGD treatment plant in the middle of town. Okay, now 5 MGD times 90, that's a 450 million gallons of storage. I do my math right?
Yep.
See, I'm not as bad as I look.
How big is our tanks in Twin Oaks?
40 million.
So we only need,
You only need, you only need 12 of them.
okay, 12, 10, 12.
We'll make them a little bigger.
Yeah, well,
But these are the things that we evaluate when we look at it. So let's say we can't build storage. It's just not practical. You got South Lake, which is 75 million at peak. Let's say we can raise it 7 or 8 feet. We might pick up another 40 or 50 million gallons, maybe. Okay, so that still doesn't cover it. What's your alternative? Groundwater.
build more lakes.
So that's a lot of lakes.
Well,
That's a lot of
I mean,
lakes.
it's three, then we already got the Discovery, I don't know how big that is, probably it's drop in the bucket.
Drop in the bucket. Lake
But
San
we-
Marcos is only 70-something million too.
Which one?
Lake San Marcos is only 70-something million gallons.
Okay, so then if you built two more in between Discovery and South Lake, you'd have 45 million.
450 million. But that's what we
Oh,
go
that's
through,
right, yeah,
that's
right,
what we
right,
go
right,
through,
right,
Jim.
right,
So,
right.
so like I said, you have a treatment plant. Okay, now you've dealt with, pretend we can deal with the water. The other option is groundwater. Okay?
Right.
But now, the trick you would be choosing as a district is you're now choosing to get into treatment inland, and you would be either selling Encina, or you have now built duplicate treatment capacity. Okay, you still have solids. So all the solids that you do from a treatment plant inland, you gotta do something with them. I guarantee it's not cost effective to do it inland, and that's the thing that the neighbors are just gonna love because of the odor. So
Yeah.
we have to get it to Encina, so we don't ever get out of owning and operating Encina, we still have to own, and we still have to have an outfall on a pipe to get it there. So when you get past that, then you have the fact that you've chosen to operate a wastewater treatment plant. The trick is, for 3.5 months out of the year, excluding the last 2 years, we have rainfall. You can't use reclaimed water or distribute during a rain event, because it can't be allowed to hit the creek or in your rivers. So now, where do you put the water? Well, at the same time, you can't use the water, and you're making the water, it's raining, which is recharging the groundwater basin. Where do you want to put your water? Where do you put it? So those are the kind of things that we'll evaluate.
Okay.
So as we're talking about recovering and taking water, let's say we can get water out of the creek. That's one of the options that I think you probably put on the list, stormwater capture. If we can do stormwater capture, well, the only time we do stormwater capture is when it's raining and nobody's using it. So now where do we put it in the interim? So again, what they'll pretend is we can put it in the ground. Okay, Well, then to reuse it, you have to pull it out of the ground and build a treatment plant. So they have that cost. So their first cut's gonna go through all these items and just say, boom, 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 here we are at the 50,000 foot level. Don't let me put words in your mouth if I'm wrong here. And then we're gonna come back to you and say, you know what, these are the ones that kinda make sense. These are the ones keep your eye on, sort of like the last two documents have been. And then you're gonna tell these guys which ones to evaluate. They're gonna now get into the details of these three. Okay, this is gonna cost this much capital, this much operating expense. Here's where we don't even know where our market is for reclaimed water. We don't know where our market is. You have the university, obviously, high school, Twin Oaks Golf Course, stuff like that. But is that enough demand there to justify a treatment plant? We may only have 2 MGD of demand max, so we build a 2.25 MGD treatment plant. Is that cost effective? That's kind of all the stuff they'll go through.
At this 50,000-foot view of all the opportunities, I hope that, and again, not serious detail, but enough detail so that you can say, okay, well, if you're thinking about doing this and you need a treatment plan and you need a storage facility, how big, how long, how much, within 20% or something. So when I look at it to make a decision, I go with L. That's not too bad, 100 million, 500 million, as opposed to, well, we don't know.
Oh, no, well, I'll let James explain that.
So Director Rand, as part of the evaluation process, as part of the scope that we work out with Black and Veatch, the staff is expecting Black and Veatch to come back with recommendations of why and why not. So we're evaluating not only things that have tangible benefits like drought tolerant, new water resource, reliability, but we're also evaluating cost items, the infrastructure, from a high level input that would need to be constructed, timing, regulatory, environmental, and basically kind of putting it into, and we haven't seen it yet, but the expectation is going to be put into some sort of form where it's fairly easy to decipher. This kind of rolls out, this makes sense. It's within a cost per acre foot that makes sense. It's within the environmental or regulatory requirements. And this one here, it's 5-6 times the cost. It doesn't buy you reliability, and they're going to be weighted, and they're going to be presented back to both staff and the board at the next workshop, and then proceed from there with the next level recommendations in more detail. So the first level will be kind of at that 50,000 foot, where it shows the pros and cons, the tangible dollars from a planning level and or from a high level, and then some of those intangible resource reliability type of things. And then the second cut upon that will be getting more into, okay, this is what you actually have to do to make it happen. And this is the timing of it, and this is how we roll it into the master plan until we get the final document. So, but really, one of the things that I think the board should definitely consider is taking a look at both short-term, as General Manager Lamb mentioned. Meadowlark right now is pretty much fully allocated to 2025, I believe is the date. So we have 15 years plus left on the contracts with Lidenheim and Carlsbad. At that point, in theory, we'll have some increased sewer, possibly increased capacity, but we're still not talking about the majority of our water, because as population grows and region grows, also so will our total demand. So, but it will be another resource, it will be a possibility. So there might be short-term things that are in the next 10, 15 years, and long-term things that are beyond that.
Yeah, and one of the things I had heard that there is, and I would hope to put this in the study, that there potentially is an opportunity to expand Meadowlark?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
We're looking at that right now.
Okay, great. So that's something I hope is on the list.
It's like highway construction, Hal. The second you're done with the highway, you come back and start again.
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty much the same thing.
And
I have a quick question, I'm sorry, staff, and you probably have to get back to it, that's fine. When we look at the cost, we look at the right thing to do. The right thing to do is to have Meadowlark and treat the water and sell it to those. That's the right thing to do. We look at the cost and all the costs associated, from the reservoir to the plant to all of that, do we have a nexus where it financially makes sense? Not just, it's the right thing to do, which I get, it's the right thing to do, but is there a financial nexus to how much we lose every year doing that?
With Meadowlark, we recover the cost. That pays
Total
for itself.
recovery.
Yeah, total recovery on the Title 22 component. So we are.
Title 22 component.
Okay, when the board entered into the contract, again, this is back from 1993, whenever it was, the decision of the board plus the subsequent contracts was to recover the Title 22 cost. In other words, our ratepayers, because of permit requirements, in a regular treatment plant, would have to pay the operating costs in a plant for advanced secondary. That's the minimum we could do as an agency. So if the board had chosen way back when not to get into the reclaimed water business, our customers would have been paying for an advanced secondary treatment plant. So when we entered into the contract with Carlsbad and Olevenhain, the board's direction was to fully recover the capital and the operating costs, including some equipment and staff and stuff like that, and insurance in the cost of the Title 22 water. So if our cost for Title 22 versus secondary, let's say it costs us $800 an acre foot to make secondary, and it costs us $1,300 an acre foot to make Title 22, we charge them $500 as a cost for that water. So it pays for itself. So our ratepayers are not paying to treat and dispose of water that they would not need to do under normal operations.
Okay, so my question is gonna be, if we take the city of Vista, for instance, who runs their wastewater in Vista, right, isn't it City of Vista?
Yeah, they have the wastewater, they don't have any treatment plants, they use Encina.
They send it straight to Encina?
Boom, gone.
They don't have a Meadowlark.
They shut down their
We
treatment plant.
have a Meadowlark.
Yep, they shut theirs down because they didn't have they couldn't sell it.
Do you know what their ratepayers pay for sewer compared to our ratepayers for sewer? That would be
Now,
just
or when they
interesting.
had just the regular sewer
Regular
charge?
regular
It's
service?
about the same, I think.
It was very
not a
close.
big
We'd have to go
difference.
pull out what we did in the budget. Very close.
So the ratepayer, the Meadowlark doesn't make a difference.
No. Meadowlark does not impact Mike, Jim, you, anybody.
Right, but how does it positively, other than we have reclaimed water, how does it positively impact our ratepayers to have it? Rather than just sending it all, just like everyone else does.
It's revenue neutral?
It's revenue neutral. The decision of the district as a good neighbor to the environment and as a water resource,
Right thing to do.
they chose to make that decision.
Okay, that's interesting.
You also have the advantage of being able to use the recycled water because of your altitude. Right?
Mhm.
Of
We're at the
your
top
elevation.
end of the system.
Yeah, where you're at in the system.
Yeah.
So while we may not be taking advantage of that because we don't have the infrastructure, it is being taken advantage of, and thereby your domestic, there's more domestic water rather than for landscaping, it's for
Yeah,
domestic.
it's an offset, so if for every 5 million we make, that's an extra 5 million available to the county to use.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily
See,
us.
No, there again, the question wasn't, it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
The question was, is it truly revenue neutral?
Yeah, it's revenue
It seems to
neutral.
be a fairly large, expensive plant to run.
No.
So personnel and.
What's that?
As long as you have the market.
Yeah, if
for it
you have
to
a
make it
market for
revenue
it.
neutral.
Now, you have to understand, as you guys have probably gone to a lot of the CASA conferences, Mike's probably hasn't heard as much as you guys have, there's always been a battle for people that go into reclamation, and these guys can attest to that, to recover the cost of the Title 22 plant. And that's gonna come down to the decision of the jurisdictional agency, the board or the city council, on what they're trying to do. Now, every agency that's done it, and you gotta put yourself in the context of, you're a Rancho California. Okay, Rancho California does not have access to an ocean outfall, so they have to go live stream discharge. Okay, totally different animal, because you've got nitrogen and phosphorus down to 0.5, I think is what the number, or even less right now, which is damn near impossible, highly expensive. So their ratepayers are paying a lot in their monthly service charge. But now, if, let's say, Vallecitos had made that choice, you know what? We don't care. We can send it to Encina, treat it, and dump it in the ocean. That was not the direction of the board way back when. The direction of the board was, but my point being, these agencies all try to recover 100% of their Title 22 cost on selling the water. So what happens is they end up trying to sell the water to Jim's Water District at $2,000 an acre foot, or they give it to them at 95% of imported cost. Imported cost might be $1,000. The treated water was $2,000. They couldn't sell it. That's the Achilles heel that everybody has had with Title 22 water for the last 2 decades, is they tried to charge too much. The decision here, which I think was a very wise one, was our ratepayers would pay for advanced secondary no matter what. So if we send it to Encina, advanced secondary. If we treat it at Meadowlark, advanced secondary. So what the decision was, okay, let's provide a local resource, let's offset import, let's do what's right for the environment. We sell it as revenue neutral, including depreciation of the capital. So the chlorine costs that we pay for Encina, Meadowlark, for disinfection, that's Title 22. The filter beds and the filtration, Title 22. The chlorine contact tanks, all that lower stuff on the treatment plant, when you stand on the top and you look down, all that stuff to the bottom end of the treatment plant, that's all part of the cost of Title 22. So it's revenue neutral. And the good part is in 15, 10 more years, 12 more years, whatever it is, you will have the choice of saying, maybe we don't want to sell it to Carlsbad and Lebanon anymore. Maybe we want to use it now. And that's what they'll look at is, okay, is it effective, cost effective for Jim to build storage, to put a pipe? I looked at putting a pipe from Meadowlark through the mountain into South Lake 20 years ago. And it was like $7 million back then. Is it cost effective for us to build storage, build the pipe, if we have the market? As Tom just said, if you got a market, it's cost effective. If you don't have a market, it's not cost effective. Or if we have to spend $100 million to serve 2 million gallons a day of reclaimed water, I can tell you it's not going to be cost effective. But that's what they'll look at. They're going to say, okay, you might have 12 million gallons a day in 15 years. IPR, DPR, rules exist, rules don't exist, short-term, long-term. But that's the matrix we want to give you of any and every opportunity you guys want us to look at. I don't care, whatever it is you want us to look at, we're going to throw it in this mix. And they will just ferret it out. We're going to come back. You guys get another full shot at it, and then we'll bring you back a third time for you to get a full shot at it.
Yeah, thank you. I kind of, as we got started today, I kind of felt like we were trying to find some recommendations or give them some guidance without really knowing where we wanted to go. And the word goal came up a few minutes ago, and I think that might not be a bad starting point for us, is to identify what are we trying to accomplish, perhaps even set a goal if that's to reduce the imported water by 50%. That 50% also came up. That might be optimistic, but and if we look at desal forecasted to be roughly 20%, of our water supply in the near future, can we tap away at the additional 30% over the next 15 years? And if that is the goal that we set, perhaps the guidance for them is to come back and look at an all aspects approach to every option, that possibility that might be out there, and then make some recommendations on how we achieve that goal, versus sitting here and saying, oh, I like NPR, or I like IPO.
Yeah, we're not going to pick anything today.
No, I understand, but it might make it more sense for them to be able to best come back to us with some recommendations if we tell them where we want to go.
Yeah,
and then they can tell us how we get there.
Yeah, I think what they could say is probably, and don't let me put words in your mouth here, is, okay, if IPR or DPR is available in 10 years, you might have an extra 5 MGD available to you. That would be this % of where you want to get to. Is that an unreasonable thing to?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we could do is kind of show you the different options, the pros and cons and costs for each, and what you achieve. So it's,
But would it be
probably not going to be, one panacea of an answer, but maybe, okay, here's 3 or 4 that collectively add up and seem reasonable, get you to that 50%, get you to 40%, maybe that extra 10% might be, that much higher of a step to try to cross.
Yeah, and then the second part of this, the question is 50% a reasonable goal? Is it achievable?
Yeah, in Southern California, there's districts that are 100% off MET just recently getting off of it. They have unique, local water supply situations, and there are some districts that are 0%. They have zero local water. They have
And I guess that would be my point, to add on to what Mike said. Can you, in your next iteration, bring back to us what and a 25 or 30-year goal could be a percentage that we might be able to look at? Because quite frankly, right now, I got no idea whether 50 is out of the
I
possibility.
think what they would come back and say is, okay, if you were to look at this with these assumptions and this rule in place, you can probably recover 5 MGD for potable reuse by the year 2025. In 2025, let's say we're getting 5 MGD from the desal, just pick a number.
Yeah.
Let's say we can get 5 MGD from this DPR, and that's 10 MGD, and our demand at that point is projected to be 30. Okay, well, you're getting 33% of your,
Okay.
at that point.
Well, yeah.
I think, oh yeah, these options that they're going through, they will be able to give you a general production, what they think it can
Okay.
do.
Oh, good.
But I don't think, Mike, we would be able in any way to say, no, if we do this, we're gonna hit 50. I think it's gonna be, here's your choices, because as Director Martin indicated, some of it starts to get pretty darn expensive to get, it's the 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
You know, you're gonna spend that 80% to get that last 20, or is it cost effective to get to, you know, if we've got 30% local supply in 15, 20 years, that'd be impressive, to be perfectly honest.
Well, we're relatively confident that we're gonna have 20% just through desal.
Mm-hmm.
So if, you know, if we're looking to an additional 10 to 15, 20% on top of that, is that achievable? And then again, and what I'd like to see is look at every option available and then tell us what the best, most financially sound way to achieve that
Sure.
is.
Yeah, I think several people mentioned this too, is not all these options are time, there's a time factor to these. Something like DPR is not something that's gonna happen in 10
Yeah.
years. So I think looking at it from a perspective of,
Yeah.
okay, for these different options, here's what we can do short term.
Excuse me one
Here's
second. I
midterm.
think James had something he wanted to say.
No, I was just gonna mention, with that 20%, that's based on today's demand. So in 2030, our demands are projected to go up significantly with growth in the region. We're still a growth agency. So it won't be 20% because that 3,500 acre feet is still 3,500 acre feet, which is 20% or a little bit over 20% of our total demand currently.
Yeah.
If we want to demand, and as we add another 50, 70% to our demands in another 25 years or so, it's still 3,500 acre
Yeah.
feet.
Unless we can double it in
Unless we can
2026.
double. And then that's an option. But,
Yeah.
so, you know, the 20% is achieved today, as our demands go up, it'll become
And
10%.
and doubling it could be one of the solutions to meet our goal.
Absolutely. I'm
And
trying
something
real hard to
something that
give
we should
that
strive
option,
for.
trying very hard to get that option for the district. And I'm saying double. We may have the opportunity when we sign this contract finally that it says we have an option up to. We may be able to pick up a whole lot more desal water at some point in the future than what I'm saying doubling. You might be able to get 2.5 times, I don't know. But the big issue on the desal water is we're actually projecting around 2026 is where the line's gonna cross. It's where the desal's cheaper. So but that's exactly right. We may be able to do it, and that's what today's for, is what do you guys want coming back to you as part of this decision matrix to kind of establish where we can go.
Okay, and thank you, and I apologize for being 10 minutes late, but is that where we're going right now?
Yeah.
Is that where we're going to right now? That's what we're gonna decide, what we wanna bring back.
No.
no.
You're throwing everything on the table today.
Everything.
Okay.
We're just
Taking
spitballing.
ideas to-
Everything you're throwing out right now from what Mike just said, well, is 50% viable? We'll come back and tell you what these options can probably generate.
All right.
Yeah. We're not looking for direction on, no, do IPR, DPR.
Okay.
Anything.
Are we trying to go back to a presentation, or we still have questions?
No, I still have an area that I would like us to put on the chart. And it doesn't have anything to do with water, it's about energy independence. And over this last 4 years, I've heard a little bit of this hydro possibility in the stream coming down Twin Oaks Valley Road. I've heard that there was a big potential to put a solar farm out on the storage facilities in Twin Oaks, but with the San Diego Gas and Electric tariff, or I don't even know where that's at any longer, it just killed any kind of big commercial, like the one we have on our
Parking lot.
parking lot, thank you, Cal. We couldn't have done that had this tariff been put on then that is on now, and I don't know where that's at. But the hydropower, the solar field, and some kind of look at what kind of energy independence or minimizing our energy costs at Vallecitos could we look at?
That is not part of the master plan.
Oh.
That is not part of the master plan. James is actually going through we just signed another contract with SDG&E to actually come in and do a detailed analysis of all our rates, and they won't get into that level, but they'll be looking at tariffs and different things we can do. The issue of a solar farm is something that is purely a negotiation between us and some kind of a third party to run a meter backwards and generate power. That's really not an independence thing, that's an offset of power costs.
Yeah,
That'd be a separate study, that's nothing to do with the master plan.
okay.
Low pressure hydro units for power generation. We're looking at that right now. Ed has actually gotten one quote to do it at Twin Oaks, payback period of the dinosaur era. Not even close to any value to doing it. It might be enough to run the lights inside the station, but it's not a power generating offset. It's just not there. If we had a real high pressure head that we needed to break 300 pounds, different story. We're breaking 30 to 40 pounds max
Oh.
coming across that station. That's one of the few. The only reason it would even remotely be considered is it's high flow. Not high pressure, but just high flow. So we did look at that last year, and he's getting some additional proposals, but that's separate from the master plan.
Okay, all right, well, then we'll talk about that.
Yeah, that's a separate
Okay.
animal.
All right,
If we, getting back to,
Go ahead.
getting back to your pipe to the mountain, back to South Lake, would we be able to kill two birds, add water storage by pumping the water over there, and then also as those lakes flow downward, also find a way to generate some sort of electricity like they do at Lake Hodges and, what's that other reservoir?
Yeah, Lebanon Reservoir.
Yeah.
You've got to have a certain amount of differential head to actually generate it. The best you would get from South Lake down to the reservoir right below it is maybe 75 feet, maybe 100 feet. Again, 40 PSI. That's about it. Problem is, when you take the water up here where you want to set the hydraulic grade line to use it, and now you stick it in a reservoir down here that's 100 feet lower, you can no longer use it because you've now lost the energy of the water. So now you're going to have to build a pump station to actually pump it back up to pressure to use it again. Again, we'll look at those kind of things. The trick you've got with South Lake is you have a long-term contract with City of San Marcos. I think it's a 75-year contract, give or take, for use. And I believe we did include the provision of that we could store reclaimed water in it if we needed to. The problem is you have an elevation requirement. It's not much good to the lake, to the city to have a recreational area when the water's doing this. You guys hear the reports every year. Where does San Diego drain their water from? Way inland? Like, Marino? Marino?
Oh, yes, Lake Marino.
Lake Marino, they drain
Marino.
Lake Marino every year and they pull the water down. Well, the people that live around Lake Marino, every year, they call Jacobs and they call everybody and complain, how dare you, you're killing our environment and the economy and the fish are dying and the boat docks are dry, because that's just storage. So it's really tough for them to operate recreational facilities when the lake's doing this. So you've got a minimum elevation you have to maintain at South Lake. So otherwise, they can't build their docks and they can't build everything that goes with it. So now you've got a band that's only about this big for storage. So these are all the things we're looking
Isn't
at.
that also a relatively old dam, earthen dam?
Yeah, I don't know what the rules of the Division of Safety Dams would be to raise that.
well, that's what we're gonna find out. But just as a point of
Yeah.
clarification, within that contract, we do have the ability to rescind it for lack of activity, which I know we've renewed
Several times.
at least twice since I've been here, and that is not
We
a
got 2
priority
years.
at all in the city of San Marcos.
2 more years.
Yeah.
16, I think.
So,
End of 16 is their last extension.
Yeah, so that's gonna become our lake. Well, by default. They aren't doing anything. Yeah.
They might at the last minute, just because
I
we
think,
said
I
that.
think that's.
They're listening.
Either person on the contract. I haven't heard from council, I haven't heard from us other than from you.
No,
Might be.
what's the term?
What's that?
Show me what you wanna do, not what you're gonna do. Yeah, so,
I'm not with you.
I'm just,
So I guess, because I know we're getting a little sidetracked and everything, so what I thought to do is maybe just step through, like,
Yeah,
what
move
are
on.
the kind of major IPR, DPR, even non-potable reuse
Sure.
options that we know have been studied previously, or that we think, you know, why it's part of our scope. So we'll start first with, start with the IPR options here. We talked about several. One, you know, Dennis mentioned is the groundwater basin. So we do have, that'd be number one, to put it in San Marcos groundwater basin, most likely from the metal arc plant. Once we have more flow or ability to get flow back, it could also be from a new
I hope you have
wastewater
more than
plant
one map.
somewhere. We talked about the challenges there, but that is one option. Another option would be the lakes, both, you know, there's South Lake, we mentioned Lake San Marcos, and surface water bodies. Again, same thing coming from the metal arc plant.
I'm sorry, surface water bodies, were you looking at future potential?
Put the recycled water in there, high treat it.
But
put
do
it
we
in
have
there, and
potential
pull
for
it out.
more? Is that what you're looking at?
What's that?
We're not
Potential
doing,
for
we're not
more?
looking at a reservoir study, no.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Just existing bodies.
I didn't
Just
think
existing
so.
water. Now, we could look at new reservoirs if that wasn't something that we thought of.
Nah, never mind.
But let's, I want
I
to
didn't
look
bring
at
it
new
up.
reservoirs.
New reservoirs.
Too late now.
Yeah, put in new reservoirs.
Yeah, I heard he's got a square 200 feet behind his house.
Yeah.
He wants a reservoir
There's
there.
40 acres the city's dying to do something with. I'd love to have something.
Anybody know some cheap hilly property?
Yeah, as flat as a pan of water.
We actually at one point wanted to dam up Sarver Lane and back up that whole thing.
The other one
Well,
that.
I was thinking of the old Miriam Mountain.
Yeah, that's where we initially started a damming study back 20 years ago.
Well, not on my property, but a little.
Well, you'd have,
You probably wouldn't be there.
you'd have beach
Oh, well, I
property.
know mine wouldn't be, but,
Lakefront
Be nice view
property.
though.
yeah, I'd be underwater. I already am, so.
No, I'm gonna confirm that James Fair over here is, options with Escondido there. Is that something you think they would be entertaining to partner on with their IPR?
Yeah, so we can talk about the concept and then see if the board has any interest in it. What Escondido is doing is over here at Hill Avenue, they're basically using every drop of wastewater that they have and creating either non-potable or indirect potable use there. So they're becoming resource limited, kind of like you are in a different way, right? You're resource limited in part because you're selling a lot of that wholesale, you don't get it for another 15 years. They're doing it to try to offload their outfall. And so one concept was, and this hadn't been looked at before, was whatever you do have excess over here on the east side of the district is trying to get it over to Hill Avenue and do some kind of combined project where you can get water out to Dixon and then eventually bring it back into the district, maybe through the, we don't have it on this map, it was on the other one.
The flume.
That
The
goes
flume,
through
yeah.
your district. So the challenge that we have is that, you know, to do reuse, you need the wastewater. And the problem is the wastewater doesn't start collecting until we really get over here. So at some point, we have to pump back wastewater to get there. But it's certainly an option that is intriguing, is, you know, it's a multi-agency type of option. It does go to different watershed. There's complexities there, but there's also opportunities. And like this reuse, you know, arena that you've seen, every part of it's complicated, but that's how you kind of work through what's a good option and a bad option. So
A quick question with that idea, and I mean, no ideas are gonna be easy, but you're talking about pumping it from there, all the way back through Escondido, up to Dixon, so you're talking at least one, maybe two lifts?
correct, but they already
Huge
have-
expense.
It is, but they already have some of the infrastructure planned from here. If you can get it to Hill Avenue, your wastewater, then they have it pumped from there all the way up to Dixon. Their program is pumping it from Hill Avenue
All the way to Dixon.
to an intermediate plant, where it's just gonna be their water treatment plant, and then they're taking it up to Dixon. Okay, this is if you're adding to it, it would be a DPR play, because they're getting past the IPR arena, because Dixon is fairly small as well. But it would be adding to that project and seeing if Escondido wanted another partner as part of that.
Let me hold you right there on something. You may recall a conversation we had a year ago. That whole southeast quadrant of the district. Okay,
Right.
it doesn't drain to us.
Right.
Yet, it doesn't drain to anybody because Escondido got rid of it out of their sphere of influence years ago because of Prop Z or whatever it was over in Escondido. Okay, so that's an area that you've got 4 or 5 developers in that southeast corner that James was just talking about, that even though it's tributary to Hill, they say, hell no. I was like that.
Hell no.
Hell no.
You should be on the stage.
That's almost like number two.
Next one leaves. It should be.
So that's an area that, again, it's a wastewater collection point that, depending on what you do graphically, geographically, you're pumping out of a basin to put it somewhere else, or you're trying to keep it in that basin so you don't pump it 6 times. So these are things where we've talked to the developers in that southeast quadrant. You're not in our sphere, you're not in our boundaries, you're not really in anybody's. But when you guys are doing this, you need to be talking about it together instead of building 4 treatment plants side by side.
Right.
When you've got the regional one right next to it, which what goes around comes around eventually. Escondido actually needs more sewage now than what they thought they would. So when they said, no, we don't want it, well, actually, we need sewage now. Same as us. 10 years ago, if I called Escondido and said, I need some of your sewage, they'd send the paddy wagon over. Like, what's wrong with you? Why do you want our sewage? Now we actually need it because we can't meet our needs. The world has changed. I mean, it really has changed. But what James was just talking about, that's the long term of could we do it through the VID flume, through that treatment plant, bring it all the way back across? There's all kinds of options here, and those are long term. Those are very long term.
There's even a couple little plays to it, because while Escondido wants the wastewater, they don't want the solids, because that is a waste, and their outfall is constricted.
It's packed.
So, there's potential to build a water reclamation plant with maybe some purple pipe, and then get them the tertiary water. So there's a lot of little different subtleties to how that play would work. But there's definitely a concept here that's probably worth at least looking at this 50,000 foot level. Whether it will make the cut or not, it goes in the hopper with everything else, and you look at the pros and the cons. But we didn't want to go anywhere where the board didn't feel comfortable with, those options. So we just wanted to bring that one up as another potential. So it's good.
And so that just kind of gives you a flavor. We're really, today, by any means, did we want directions to decide, if you want us to look at every single option and every combination, that's what the matrix will do.
Dennis, at one point, we talked about a scalping facility where we just suck off the water and leave the solids go to Encina. Is that one of the things they may look at?
That's what they'll have to look at, because if you need more reclaimed water somewhere up in the middle of town, you
Yeah.
have a choice of how to get it and where do you send the waste.
Okay.
Because keep in mind, it all ties together. There's been the thought floating around, and it's been stated, is that by building a new treatment plant, we avoid an outfall. Well, we don't, because we still have a certain amount of capacity and solids and stuff that we have to get to Encina.
When you say treatment plant, is that the same as a scalping plant?
Yeah.
Okay,
Metal-Arc is a scalping plant,
right,
because Metal-Arc only exists because we take the flow from up here and send it to it.
right, okay.
So Metal-Arc is considered a
All right.
scalping plant.
Yeah, and location-wise, there's really, 2 drivers for water recycling plant, well, 3. One is you want to be near the trunk sewer, the supply source, and it's got to be a sustainable level for what you're trying to achieve. 2 is you obviously want it near the use points and you reduce piping and dumping. 3, of course, is the NIMBY, whose backyard is it going to be near? So I just kind of circled this for now, we can look at anything else. But, the green lines here are some of the more major trunk lines in your system that are going to have more likely the more sustainable sewer flows. Of course, we have to be careful not to take, anything upstream of Meadowlark. You wouldn't want to pull more out than what you need. in
Is
Meadowlark.
that circle you put near our property that we own on Sec Marcus Boulevard?
I wasn't looking at the aerial part, I was just looking at kind of
Well,
the
is that-
city,
does
kind of
that-
away from Meadowlark, because you need to be able to.
Is that the general area that you
Yeah.
circled?
It's
Yeah.
downtown,
Okay,
It's general.
close,
the whole downtown.
close.
I'm a little confused about the option of going to Escondido. Why would we do that?
One of the reasons to do it is that you're getting some economy of scale, because they're already planning the infrastructure to do at HARP, to do the tertiary treatment, to do advanced treatment. They have it at the AMP site. And you do have the infrastructure through the flume to get through back to you. So you can actually, it's one of the more direct ways that you can do as close to IPR as you probably have for your district, because you can get it to a plant, you can get it through advanced treatment. It would go up to the Escondido Vista Water Treatment Plant.
Meets the state's blending retention time requirements, because it's a large reservoir.
Right. Has a water treatment plant associated with it, then would come across the flume, which is already built, so you don't have to build another pipe to get it to you, just an agreement with Vista. But there are some rehab that goes along with that flume that they're needing to do, so in the connection. It's
So do we have water now that we're not using? Is that what you're saying, that we have?
No.
We have recycled water or?
No, this is just a way that's part of that drainage basin, our southeast corner, and part of that could drain to HARP. instead of pumping it over to Encina.
Uh-huh.
And it might be cheaper to send it to Harf, pump it to Dixon, and then bring it back through the aqueduct than it is to pump it out of the basin to Meadowlark to Encina and
So
bring
you're
it back.
not creating much, you might get some economies of scale, is what you're saying, but
Yeah.
Encina loses it, but it goes.
We might pick up 1 million gallons a day in available resource.
Okay, all right.
But that 1 million gallons might be $4,000 an acre foot. So the board's gonna say, yeah.
And these concepts IPR too, I think the now part is more, this is stuff that's 20, 30 plus years out.
Yeah.
So, I think James mentioned, the district's gonna grow, you will have more wastewater. And obviously, the contract with Meadowlark, and at some point, you can choose to, continue the relationship, or you might have opportunities that you say, no, we might actually wanna keep our water to ourselves. So, I think, so when we consider these, I'm not worried too much about where the wastewater is coming from or the arrangements of it, other than the projections and how much is out there. And the institutional part is something we'll look at down the road.
It's interesting that the first conference I went to, when I was on the board back in 2000, just newly elected, the indirect and direct potable, I don't think was a paragraph long, and everybody was projecting, 20 years from now. These last conferences, boy, it's right dead center, front and center. So in one of your projections, would you also add a caveat that if, instead of 15 or 20 years that we're talking about direct potable, what happens if it's in 10? Because the drought continues, everybody says, you know what, we better get this thing going Mach Schnell. So add that to your matrix about what happens if it's sooner.
We could use something like 10,
Yeah.
20, let's say 50. Then also
Mach
have
Schnell,
10. For the emergency
Could you give
scenario.
clarification, what is Mach Schnell?
Got the emergency.
Don't you remember anything?
Don't you
from
remember Bill Hogan's Heroes?
Urban Zeros? That means right now.
Right now.
Mach Schnell, right now, yeah.
Snell,
Think of
hurry.
the 10-year emergency scenario. Like,
Yeah, there you go, yeah.
Thank you for that vocabulary.
Kid of the 50s, I mean, it's right there in my foreign languages.
So now what I want to cover too is
Schultz.
more direct potable reuse options. We mentioned already, and I captured that in the first one, is the Encina option with the seawater desal, which is actually something in Orange County, the same Poseidon at Huntington Beach. There's been, Orange County Sand District has had a very similar conversation. Not with Poseidon, but just kind of on their own thinking, hey, if we wanted to reuse all our water, what would it take? They're already putting a huge amount in the ground, so and they can't really put any more, but that's another option for them. So it's a very similar concept. But I guess what I want to talk about now is, so we have the Encina to desal connection. Are there other opportunities? There is the groundwater basin we talked about, which also, I'll write it again here, because we really don't know much about the groundwater in this area and how, would it be direct, would it be indirect? There's a lot of challenges to that, but we'll keep that as an option. Yeah, you have the lakes as options. We'd have the Escondido direct potable reuse option. Again, that's sort of on the cusp of, is it IPR, is it DPR? It just kind of depends on the regulations that are still being worked out. The only other thing I can think of really is direct pipe to pipe, or build a, send it up to like Twin Oaks, somebody else's water treatment plant, or build your own water treatment plant and retreat it again.
Yeah, it seems like it's something like that Creole. I mean, the challenge we have again is the resources. We've got to get the resource, which is generally, it's built up to any substantial number down here in the valley. This is where we have it, especially after Meadowlark is done. And we're looking at DPR, we're looking farther out. So, this resource that's down here is where the resource is. With DPR, even IPR, we haven't talked about trying to drive it up here. And generally don't like to drive it up here because it's expensive and it takes power costs. But there also is an element of equity, or if you're taking recycled water, getting it to a place where you can get it to your entire district as well. And even though you do have pumping costs to get it up here, no one in the district can say they were treated There's two takes to it. If Vallecitos did one just to get it up to your Twin Oaks tanks, then you could take it anywhere in the district. If you blended it into the Twin Oaks plan and the aqueduct, it's a different story. So maybe there's two ways to capture it. One is you do some kind of direct potable reuse into the aqueducts, and then you get credit for that. But usually what you want to make sure you do is that you're getting some of the water, because you don't want to be in a position where you're giving somebody else your direct potable reuse water, and somebody says, okay, it's not good enough for your district to drink, but you want to send it downhill to somebody else. When you're dealing with potable reuse, that equity issue is something that I think you want to consider in your criteria, because you'll get those kind of things. If you go back to San Diego, the '98 study, the repurification project, which now is kind of regenerating itself as pure water, one of the issues there was social justice, about who was getting the water and who wasn't. So this comes into play, I think, in any of these options, and we'll make sure to point that out as one of the criteria. Scott's going to get this criteria section in a minute, how that plays. So I think there's probably a DPR option where you can do pipe to pipe down here. You've got to build a plant all the way, from wastewater all the way to potable water, somewhere in this area to be able to do it, or somehow expand Meadowlark and then deliver it directly to your system. And there's probably enough demand out here to do it, but it leaves out this. So I think there's a couple different options in the DPR play of, could do this, but it might not, answer the social justice issue. You could get it up to Twin Oaks tanks, take it to anywhere in your district at some more expense, or some kind of project where you couple it with the aqueducts, and you take it and it goes into the aqueduct. So there's probably three different little options that we can lay out there for DPR.
Yeah, can you explain that social justice thing?
Yeah, so the concept is, in big districts where you have wastewater coming, if you're doing potable reuse, and this happened with San Diego initially, so let me use the San Diego example, it's probably a good example. The reclamation plant is in North City, which is right by UTC in La Jolla, if you're familiar with that area. The wastewater is coming from northern San Diego to that plant. The potable reuse project at that time in the late 90s, in '98 was when it died, was to take and treat that water and send it to San Vicente. That water then went and was treated at Alvarado, and it serves central San Diego. So the issue was North County, North San Diego, not your, but the city of San Diego's effluent was being treated and served as a water supply for central San Diego. And that there was an equity issue in that process. Now, La Jolla was getting that water, others were getting that water, but that was an issue. So now with the new pure water program and the dam raise that the water authority did, that water for San Diego can go anywhere in the city. So that social justice issue goes away in the new pure water program. So anything you plan for in their potable reuse, that should be one of the criteria to consider is there that equity coming across? Is it an issue for the district or not? Doesn't say that you have to do it one way or the other. In fact, what's interesting is that we're seeing a shift in the reuse area where people are actually realizing, and this water quality is better than the water that we're getting and actually want it. So, before where it was like, you're feeding me something that's bad, now it's quite attractive because the salt content is so low in the water. So it's a very dynamic, this reuse area, it's exciting, but it's very dynamic, it makes it complicated, but those are the kind of things that we try to capture as well as we can, so that you have a full breadth of considerations when you're making these decisions.
Do we have a social equity situation now with a desal versus a Liebenheim?
I would say years ago, we would have had that, but I think nowadays, because it's gonna be exactly what James just said, it's gonna be looked at a higher value, higher quality water coming in there. So you're not gonna get the complaint of what you might have gotten before, which had been, well, they're getting it, we're not. Now it's just all being viewed as a resource. I think that's the issue in the past, was it was, with the wastewater, it was sort of like, okay, you're treating your crap and sending it to us. I mean, literally, that's what it was. From the standpoint, we're blending the water rate, so it's not something that's gonna be an impact on the ratepayers.
And a Liebenheim's 4S, where does that water go?
They use that all locally for all their irrigation along the major strips and the golf course and everything down there. That's, how big is that plant?
Purple pipe, strictly Title 20.
Strictly Title, how big is that plant? Two? I think 2 MGD max. I don't think it's even that big. Yeah, they use it all locally.
But actually, no odor whatsoever in the middle of Forest Ranch. That's amazing.
Yeah. I've been there when it did smell, but.
Okay.
It's a sewer plant, it's gonna smell.
Well, the day we were there, I walked over
Yeah.
a massive.
Where they do the aeration.
And you could smell nothing, I'm standing on top of it going, I can't believe it.
Yeah. It's pretty, it's,
And that was the same when I went to Colorado, that big treatment plant, it was, because it's winter, they have to put it all indoors. You drive up to it, it looks like an office with an industrial building. And it's the same as the ones we have here, but it happens to be in a big block building, so.
So I think the key for us is, because we do want to share with you all some draft criteria, things that we'll move forward when we start weighing these options, is making sure we're capturing all those thoughts, so we can show you the criteria that we're planning on using to get your input on that as well. So when the time's right, if we capture them all, and the line, if we haven't, again, this was the opportunity to capture all the thoughts, we'll maybe make sure we have captured them all before we share the criteria that we're going to put on.
So were there any other concepts we wanted to talk? We talked about stormwater, we captured that.
I just want to say really quick, I've seen your reports at the Water Authority, and I know you do, as a company, a really thorough job. And you've certainly been wonderful at simplifying down all the details and the pros and cons, so I'm actually very excited. And I don't know that I have specifics. I mean, I assume that you understand we want you to look at every option and to maximize the results from those options. And the only thing I've noticed in this, do you also take into consideration when you're considering these things, and it might not be part of it or not, but do you take into consideration the anticipated growth in particular areas? So for example, we're talking about a possible place to put a lake or treatment plant. Are you aware what is planned or thought to be planned for that area?
You mean in terms of conditioning developers to do?
Yes, I mean, like
certain
some areas,
things?
if they're already built, you say that's a great place for a lake, but there's already something there. So I'm just wondering, does that play at all into this, or in anticipation of where our increase of waste will be coming from? Because it seems to me those would have some influence on it as well.
Yeah,
I'm just wondering if that plays into it.
It's not specific in our approach. but I
we
do
know,
think
we know where the Sandia growth is projected, because they give us that information. And when we do our EIR, we do to the program level EIR. So if something in this study came out and said, yeah, we need to build a reservoir, okay, well then obviously we gotta fit it in a canyon somewhere. And if that's something the district told us to move forward on, but the board said, okay, we really want you to be serious, then we have to look at it at a project level, EIR, when we do our environmental document.
But they're not necessarily using that in their
No.
choice at
Come on.
this point.
No, that would almost be impossible for us to determine exactly what growth is gonna look like. All we know is they're gonna build 10,000 houses in this area.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just, yeah.
But the general criteria will also have, you know, costing, so if you have to acquire land, if there's environmental issues, just from a 50,000 foot level, that'll all kind of just roll into all the costs that would be added up for, you know, pursuing this reservoir or pursuing this purple pipe option. Where are you gonna put the tank, where are you gonna put the pump station, where are you gonna put the reservoir? Does the district have a property, does it not, does it have to acquire property? Those will be considered and cost and weighted in the final outcome. So, but they won't be individualized, we're not getting down to that level at this point to know that there'll be,
I
you know.
didn't mean it specifically, I meant a general perspective
Yes.
on where growth is supposed to happen. And then I would just like to put in a push for giving some priority to a multi-agency or a cost efficiency in the projects. I want us to take care of ourselves, but I think there's something to be said if we can give an extra point.
Sure.
For something that works with others. And then you mentioned social injustice, and I just thought in the process, well, somewhere in the process, maybe not now, but further down, some of these things are great plans, but you also have to, for 30 years down the road, you do have to plan your social engineering and anticipate where governmental rules as well as social opinions are going. So I would like you to look into the future with a perfect crystal ball and come back with just the 5 perfect answers.
We'll check back in 50 years and see.
Well, it's even, you may recall.
We're gonna come and dig you up. It didn't work out.
I'm hope I'm here in 50 years.
Wouldn't it be nice?
I don't want to leave my colleague, Mr. Hernandez, out there to dry, but you will include cloud seeding? Cloud seeding? Seeding cloud?
And rain dances.
Rain dances?
Well, you know what happens, you know what happened in San Diego when they
I'm
did
there,
that?
bro. I'm there, bro.
You notice I didn't talk about new water, so.
And I will have one question, and maybe you guys can give me back an answer. I know our staff has heard of it, but I don't think they. There was a gentleman in Carlsbad, right off the 101, that sells water in 5-gallon, high phosphorus, high glucose, high something or other.
Alkaline.
Would you tell me where that water comes from? He has a pipe, he says. Do we know? Do we have any clue?
I'm not familiar with it.
It's-
Not familiar with it either.
If you go over and read the placard, that's where Carlsbad was formed. The guy drilled a well there 20 years or however many years before Carlsbad was formed. That's where the water for the community came from. It's high alkaline, which is supposedly mineral water, and it's still there. And the city was formed around it. Where it comes from, no idea.
And he's able to sell it because he's grandfathered, because he was there before the water district, I'm assuming, but he sells it right out of the ground. Now, if that's happening right next to the ocean, how deep does it have to be?
No
I
idea.
don't wanna put a lot of credence into my fellow director, but there's a reality sitting right there, and everyone keeps to go, I don't know. Well, we should know. If that's there and it's coming right out of the water and it's potable, it's coming from somewhere.
Isn't that place that's kind of, looks like kind of a rock building?
Yeah, it's right on the main drag, right there, right downtown Old Carlsbad.
Most likely, he's pumping at very low levels.
Yeah, how he's getting it, I don't know without groundwater intrusion.
It would probably.
Director Martin, to know what's going on underground is just practically an impossibility.
But he is selling a lot of it, whatever it is, because.
I don't know about a lot, if he's selling it 5 gallons.
No, but I walk my dog back past there every weekend, and there's a line there every single Saturday. So,
All I'm saying is people swear by it, and if there's one, there might be another one. Who knows? Maybe there's a river. How deep, I don't know, just questions, how deep do they look? I don't know what's feasible and what's not. And my guess is if it's down, but if he did it 20 or 30 years ago, how deep could they go back then? I don't know the answer to that. But maybe give us some answers on it. Be nice. You guys right here in San Diego County, you should know
Well
about
opportunities, is that what you're saying?
it. You're the water
Yeah.
wizards.
Thank you.
That's one that's in the scale that I'm not familiar with. We'll see what we can find.
Please do, it'd be very interesting. And get rid of the cloud seeding.
We have that, we'll do that, and we did a Colorado River study, with some thoughts on that. So that actually would be probably easier one to answer than Carlsbad water outlet.
I just hear people talking about it, and more and more people are lining up to buy the water.
they are.
Criteria?
Yeah, let's get through the criteria now.
Yeah, the board's ready for that, and we wanted to make sure that the board had an opportunity to weigh in on any ideas.
Well, I had something. You were talking about interagency. I think you said interagency.
Well, I meant I said multi-energy.
And I was talking with Dennis, and after we had our meeting at Encina, and what's becoming more clear to me, it's taken a long time for it to sink in, but what's becoming more clear is that districts or special districts, water districts, sanitation districts, are much more aware and tuned in, because that's the only thing we do, having to deal with water. Where you have agencies that are a part of cities, it's a little bit more complicated, because those are run by city council people who have multiple duties. And it was just interesting, that's all, on how it is. It seems, you know, when I'm at some of these meetings, it seems very clear on what's needed out there, but there's a different priorities by different agencies, if you will. Cities as opposed to special districts.
I disagree with you.
So good luck with that.
You guys aren't familiar with City of LA as much, but I can tell you, they have a harder time dealing within themselves than they do other districts.
Well, when I said that, I was referring to your comment with Escondido. You had said it was multi-agencies. I was really thinking water water in my head, because I do realize there can be difficulties
No, the
with
I
any
think,
of that.
as mentioned before, things like Encina is successful because it's multi-agency, it's
Yeah.
you get economy of scale.
Right.
Value to that because you have people with shared problems, shared interests, or some sort of arrangement where everybody can, put in 5 cents and get out 6 cents.
Right, right.
Which otherwise they put in 6 cents and get out 3 cents. So there's definitely, if there's opportunity there, we want to capture that.
So I think that, to add to that, the nice thing maybe we can add is for criteria, it's not here, it's the next slides, but the funding is also, one external funding is also, you get extra points these days for those multi-agency
Yeah.
opportunities.
Oh, you do?
So that's the grant funding, the bond, we're all looking at this drought, if there's one positive thing about the drought, is driving support for the bond, and the resource, the North County study was the same way, multi-agency, and that's partly why the earlier money was supported for those companies. So, that might tie into our criteria discussion as well, as those kind of opportunities are more likely to generate, grants.
I mean, that's why the whole North San Diego group is formed to solicit those external funds.
In line with this scope, to take a look at that North County Recycle Water feasibility study and tie into any opportunities that may open up in Vallecitos. So all these options that are right now, we're gonna also look at that North County Recycle Water so we can see if that makes it more possible.
Yeah, and we're ready to talk about just real brief what the criteria is. So some of the things, and this is just kind of a draft, these are just some of the concepts we've come up with. One is we gotta collect data and info. And it sounds funny to put in a criteria, but sometimes, we can get a hoard of data that we don't even know what to do with, and there's other times there's almost nothing out there. So it becomes we have to make assumptions or speculate a lot. So that becomes, a factor. Availability of the flow, is a concept. Do we have enough flow to do something with it, depending on where we are, both in terms of location and time frame. We have the regulatory aspects. There's the current aspects, and then there's our best guess on the crystal ball of where we think we're going to be. Both, and it's the time frame, 10, 20, 50 years. It's going to be very different, of course. The constraints and barriers that each of these opportunities may have. We talked a lot about institutional complexity. I should twist that around too and say the institutional opportunities too, if they're there. Public perception we talked about, that's a really big deal. Obviously, the purple pipe stuff is pretty, in most communities, not all, it is fairly easy to accomplish. Obviously, direct potable reuse hasn't been done before outside of a couple of thirsty people in Texas. That's a bit of a sales job extraordinaire to accomplish that, depending on what you're doing in your community's environment. And then the external funding. There's some opportunity, multi-agency, more technology advanced projects that may have better funding opportunities than others, so we'll look at that. There's the potential costs, of course, and then there's the potential benefits. The benefits in terms of water supply, how much are we offsetting? How does that offset any of our capital improvement plans that are needed in the future? And then there's the avoided wastewater costs. If we are able to treat more ourselves, that means we pay less into Encina. How does that benefit us? If we are able to reuse more, does that mean we need less downstream sewer capacity? What's that trade-off there? So those are some of the things that we'll try to capture with these different options. And like I said, some of it's going to come down to data and the ability to have meaningful information to work with. In some cases, we'll have some really good stuff. In other cases, we may have very limited and have to make some very broad, quick, educated assumptions. So, is there any other criteria you think we're missing that we didn't capture? I put the social stuff is really part of the public perception.
And part of that other social thing, you didn't hear a whole lot about it, but when the funding was done for the desal plant, how the funding was structured was based on that, what do they call it, social equity?
Oh,
They came up-
generational equity.
Generational equity.
Yeah.
Because they had to bring that in was by putting the full cost of the facility up front, it was viewed as a long-term supply for future generations. So when they did the funding, it was a ramped funding to where as the demand was needed because of increased population and next generations, it wasn't funded by this generation and then said we got a free ride down the road.
Deferring principle.
Deferring principle type stuff. So that was part of the whole concept they looked at on the funding as well. So it's not just lumped up front where your rates went from boom to boom and then they declined to where the future generation got the benefit of the prior generation paying for it. So that's some of the stuff that, believe it or not, needs to get thrown into these 20 and 30-year looks that we look at, part of the equity.
Right, and I think one other thing that was mentioned too, that, you know, it may be both an opportunity as well as a criteria, and that's the growth development areas. If there's opportunities or if there's some sort of that factors into a criteria. It's always easier to build pipes and things like that as part of a new development than it is to come back and retrofit it back in. So that'll be definitely something we'll want to consider.
Like I said, I think it's a pretty good matrix that'll give you some options as they go through. And again, if you want to hit the next slide there, that's kind of the process is,
Yeah, this is what James.
That's what
showed
James already
earlier.
went
So
over. Yeah.
Step one, we've got the workshop to identify the different options. We want to capture your concepts and criteria. We're going to go back now, start evaluating those concepts, and then the plan is to meet again in January and review those results, and to, for us to point out what we think are the top 3 opportunities and work through those with the board.
And then once we go through those top 3, then they're going to get into the nuts and bolts. Then it's going to be the cost. They're going to start bringing you back cost per acre foot. What really does pencil out or what doesn't pencil out, the board it may be 2 of them. The board says, let's put them both in there, but 5-10 years out. Don't start worrying about it now. Could be, keep it in the back burner. The last master plan in the IRP said do desal, do the Escondido, Alleviate connection, and continue to look at Escondido if they have water available. Well, they haven't had water available, but that was kept on the forefront because we didn't need to build a treatment plant. They already had one. And when we did the 2008 master plan, they wanted to actually get rid of the reclaimed water to us to help change things. Well, that's now changed because they've changed their whole concept, what they want to do. So what was in 2008, probably not viable anymore. So that's what you'll get back, and you could end up getting through those top 3 and saying those are all really great, but it's the wrong time, or something else. There's no decisions been made at this point. Plus, keep in mind, they're gonna go back and also take everything from the 2007 IRP and throw those in the mix as well, which is everything from buying capacity in the Escondido Vista treatment plant, because they get water from Henshaw. That is local water. You buy water from Henshaw, you also buy an Indian lawsuit. It might not be worth it to us. So, there's.
Employ an attorney.
Yeah, and we keep an attorney hired for the next 100 years. So there's pros and cons to all this stuff as far as water, but that's what we'll be bringing back to you at the next meeting.
And maybe I still have a difficult time, maybe I'll just talk to you in private about Liebenheim being a new source of water, because it's really not.
It's a portfolio. Keep in mind, it's not a new source, it's a portfolio.
I know.
It's flexibility.
They get the water
It's diversified.
as we do.
Well, you know, on that concept, years ago, the Water Authority wanted us to get off our number 2 connection in Escondido. So the one that you saw on the far east side out there, really tiny building that looks like somebody's shed in their backyard.
Yep.
Okay, that was our first connection to the first aqueduct that was built by the Navy. Okay, that pipe's at full capacity. But whenever there's an aqueduct shutdown, that pipe is always, not always, I'd say 95% of the time, kept active because there's so many agencies that have no water supply options or storage. So when they kept asking us to get off that pipe, we said no. We paid for it, it's ours. We bought the pipe from Carlsbad. The pipe that goes from that used to go from that all the way to Carlsbad. So we bought the piece in between. We just turned the valve off the Ranch Santa Fe Road. So that's a diversity issue, so that whenever the aqueducts go down, we always have one live connection to the aqueduct. So the last shutdown we had went 11 days instead of the 10 or 9 that was proposed. We've got 150, 170 million gallons of storage, way more than anybody else does of a small agency. If we didn't have that connection in Escondido from a diversity standpoint, we would have been out of water in 5 days. But because of the flexibility, we're fine. We didn't even notify the customers. We weren't worried about it. That's part of what we look at, not necessarily new water, but diversity so that if something happens, we've got water. So they get weighed pretty equally as far as new water versus diversity.
No other
But it's
questions?
diversified at what southern point? Because if there's no water coming from the north, then you lose that diversity. And then, or if the water, for whatever reason, an earthquake or something, the source of that water isn't able, I mean, where is that at? Is that?
The Leaving Reservoir.
No, but I mean, even before it gets there, like in Riverside, is
It all
that?
comes from Mass.
Well, it comes from
But at
that.
some point, to Hal's point, it's only diversified once it arrives in San Diego, or north San Diego County. And then
Absolutely.
we can get it from the pipeline in the east, we can get it from the Livingston. But if there's a loss of water before it arrives here in the first place, then it's not
It's
really
only,
diversified.
only so many places.
Okay.
We can get it from the Colorado, we get it from, now keep in mind, San Diego gets it at the south end of the county now through the All-American Canal. They have the emergency storage program pump back station that's at San Vicente. San Vicente pumps from San Vicente to up here, which comes to the Leaving Reservoir, which means we'd get it. So there's only
Yeah,
so many
but I think
pools to stick it
But
in.
one of the
Yeah.
goals of this process that we're going through today should be to really look for truly diversified water sources like desal or recycling that are separate, completely separate from
Yeah.
all the other sources. that
Your
we're
only
currently
new
using.
supply period is the ocean. That's a very simple decision. The diversity is gonna pick up the small percentage, like you say, of reclaim, of how we do it.
Well, then, a little more education. Lake Wilford, Lake Henshaw, all those bodies of water, those are not water generated from that basin? They're being pumped from Metropolitan or somewhere?
Well, Wolford, what's the one under the freeway?
Oh,
Hodges. Hodges is the upstream basin.
Yeah, that's the-
Okay, that's the upstream basin,
Right.
period.
No,
That's local.
no,
That's just
no
local
water
water.
delivered.
No, that's local water owned by San Diego and Santa Fe.
Right, and Wilford?
Lake Wolford is local
That's local.
to the
Up there.
top, which is owned by Escondido.
Right, and Henshaw
Vista.
is local
And
up
that's
there.
Hen- and that's
So,
Vista.
the connection we do have, or, do we have a connection from Escondido?
We could.
Could.
Yeah, and that's
So
why
that-
that's in the
That would
mix.
be another one of our diverse
Yeah.
opportunities
Right.
to get water without worrying about net or.
Now, just keep in mind, when we're talking about diverse supply of water, we have to have some way to have control of that water. I can guarantee you right now, VID in the middle of an emergency, when they need water. So that's where, if you go back to the evaluation, step one of them is the availability of when and where.
I see.
That's
yeah.
part of the process. Yeah, we can look at every option out there, and that's the diversity of having a portfolio. Okay, sometimes we can get it here, sometimes we can get it there.
Yeah.
Because I gotta tell you, if it ever happens and San Diego goes into that situation, state's gonna step in and take the water over to say this is where it's going. They're gonna tell they're gonna tell the water authority what to do. That's gonna come down to the bottom line. Everybody's gonna share.
And VID, though, you just brought up, is the same as Levenheim. We have a state of emergency. They're cutting us off first. We're the fairhead stepchild.
Most likely.
I mean, I understand it. I understand it makes sense.
I think what's the bottom line for all of us is
Look at everything.
that the reality is, if we are going to rely on our own source of water, the lakes around us, we can't use water the way we're using it even now, much less the population. And when we say high diversity, even though some of it, we're still getting much of it from Metropolitan or from Colorado or Imperial, yes, if there's an emergency, we can say to we believe with the water we have, we can last for 180 days, or we can last for 360 days. But the truth is, there's a point at which it stops, and that's the reality of our lives, because we've more than overallocated our water. And part of what we're doing here, I feel, as we talk 2030, I feel personally that it is just as important as we're moving forward to build these things, that we're raising generations of people who use a lot less water, who don't think they have to have a 20-minute shower every day and don't have to have lawns on every piece of sidewalk. That's not even part of this study, but when you talk about the diversity, it's true. If we have an earthquake and everything
It's
breaks
cut off.
off and we're
Yep.
stuck with our little reservoir tanks, that's what we've got.
Yeah.
And you're also right.
6
when
months.
things- And Hal's right, when things get really bad, one takes care of one's territory. And yes, the state will tell us where it's gonna go, and the legal hang will say, I need it. But that's where I think, as a nation, we often are good at facing a crisis.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we can diversify and look at the options, but the bottom line is there's only so much water coming south, period. Well, look at this year, 5%. So
Yeah.
that's similar to the aqueduct being cut off.
I keep thinking we'll have the earthquake and we'll find there's springs
Yeah,
under.
the ones that Jim
us,
found
like
up in Napa.
And it will be solved. I would just like to say thank you for the presentation and opportunity. I find what you all are gonna be doing really fascinating, but I do not envy you.
Did we hit on all the
Can't wait
different?
to see the results. but-
Okay, with that, anything else?
Thank you, guys.
Adjourned.